LaTecia Johnson, you have been my favorite person I've connected with in the last like 2 months at least, if not more, because very few people have that overlap of creative and tech and like the worlds that they're serving. And so when we got connected and you told me what you were doing, I was just hyped to meet you because I just
thank you
like what you're doing. And then we got to talk, and like before the recording started, we just shared like founder life dumping, which is therapeutic, and I think we all need to do this more.
Yeah. I don't know why people don't do it. I think, I don't know why people don't do more. Just be honest about the process and the journey.
Right. So, okay. So let's do the recap, because Ingenious Studios is your business. Right. And so tell me, I mean, I want to know the whole story again and get like the whole journey, the ins and outs, but tell me about the product. Like, tell me about what you're building.
So I think the easiest way to explain Ingenious is that we help accelerate the path to market for global brands and talent. And what we're really looking at and really focused on is helping brands work better with the creators across their roster for their in-market activations. And that looks like working with kind of athletes that are doing these partnerships and these activations, working with artists and musicians, as well as content creators, I think is traditional. But the process of actually launching and running a creator-led campaign is just deeply manual, requires a lot of action and activity from so many different teams. And it's just really, really complicated. And a lot of it just boils down to a bunch of people jumping in spreadsheets and trying to manage things. And you're laughing because you worked in creative.
Oh, and I have spreadsheets open. Like
there's a spreadsheet, and I always say like there's a spreadsheet as we're talking that's probably haunting you right now. And that's just something that we've accepted as like the status quo. We have like all this technology, we have all of these cool tools, and at some place it will say, hey, I'll just spin up a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet becomes the thing that rules everything. And I've worked in operations, I've worked in media and tech and creator for a very long time. And it's just like, why is this the normal thing? And what I realized is like, operations is the hardest thing to solve for. So people rarely start there. It becomes the afterthought. And like my approach to Ingenious was, well, what if we start there and we really take the time to solve this problem and get people out of the spreadsheet and really take the time to understand why they default to the spreadsheet, and then start to build a tool that's intuitive to the ways in which creative teams work and how they interact, and then be able to scale things from there. So, I mean, that's a kind of really, really big way to say, like, this is what we're building.
That's cool though. I mean, there's so many things to touch on. One is like, I think why we connected is we saw very similar problem sets and we approached them from different angles, right? Which is great. And it's fun. So one of the early pieces of advice that was conveyed to me was like, make sure you're not like, it was around the spreadsheet. And it was like, can you do it easier in a spreadsheet? And it's such an interesting place to start from an analysis. Like, do columns and rows work? And I say this because most recently I was following, some really smart, really, really capable person on LinkedIn and associated with YC. And they're like, oh, here's the stack we recommend to startups. And it was literally 35 different applications.
Yeah.
And I was going through it. It's like, I need a spreadsheet to manage those applications. Bro.
To know where I go. Yeah.
And like, that's
actually insane.
Exactly. And that's like our approach, right? Is that like, listen, you're not going to automate everything, but there's these specific use cases like brand activation, creator activation that absolutely can be automated because all of the touch points, and they don't need to be as elastic, if you will. And it sounds like that's where you came from, because this is also an inflection point. Like, creator economy didn't really exist until 7 years ago.
Exactly. Right. It's I'd say it's changed so much over the last decade, especially traditional media. And when we think about traditional media, or we think about media as a whole, it's really this idea of like, we think about Disney and we think about Marvel. We don't really think about the creator. We don't think about Issa or Issa Rae or Mr. Beast, but really look at their businesses. They're
Issa
building.
Rae was just on my crossword, by the way, and it's like one of my fiance's favorite actresses. So anyway,
You know, but she started on YouTube, you know, like she started on YouTube. She had a video series on YouTube about, I would say 2010, 2011, Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. And that's where she started. It was on YouTube, and she was in college and putting together these videos for with her college roommates and teammates, and really working through. And it became just this kind of massively viral thing. Everyone knew about it. And that's kind of where the story of Issa started. Nope. And like now we see her and she's doing all of these amazing things, but Mr. Beast and Issa started on YouTube. They started at the same place. And so when I think about creators or the creator economy, and I think about media, and I start to say, well, okay, if you really look at how creators are working and acting today, they're operating as media businesses. They're starting on YouTube, and then they're diversifying into products or merch. And then they're looking at, okay, well, I have a community. You're marketing across different channels that you distribute your content across. What do media companies do? Yeah. Right. And so we are at an inflection point for that. And I just think it's such a unique opportunity to be able to say, okay, you have a bunch of creators and teams that are managing these large budgets. Yeah. And you have traditional media who is big for all of the reasons that they needed to be big before. And it's changing. And now a lot of things are independent. And a lot of the systems and processes are being built as we go. And when that happens, you're not thinking about optimization. You're thinking about solving problems. But to really be able to scale things, you have to start thinking about optimization. You have to start thinking about the ways in which things work and how they work better together. And just everything is just so fragmented, right? 35 different, the thing that you guys are solving for, 35 different tools. If you really look across, like agencies use something, brands use something, creators will never log into that thing. All of these systems are broken, you know? And so like that's the opportunity. And where we see the opportunity is to really become that infrastructure layer for the creator economy and the media industry to help them work better together.
That's really cool. And it's so funny. I'm reading this book right now that's actually propping my laptop up. Otherwise I would feature it, but it's like trend breakers or something like that, or pattern breakers it's called.
Okay.
And it's like very a cool Teal collaboration, whatever. His first book, 0 to 1, I think is one of the greatest startup books.
Agreed.
Regardless of, you can say whatever you want about the guy, but he's smart and good at what he does. And regardless, the book is starting off, and some of it I agree with, some of it seems a little reductive or deductive, but they talk about these inflection points, right? And that's like kind of how the book is starting off, to your point. And then they talk about how important identifying behavioral change is. Mm-hmm. And like literally this spoke to me because I'm like a child of behavioral economics, and I am fascinated by it. But it's also amazing. I don't know how it's been in your experience, how much pushback you get sometimes. Like mm-hmm. I get pushback in good ways and in, I think, bad ways, like people that honestly don't know what they're talking about, which is they're like, oh yeah, like they look at every day, right? And they're like, this is gonna make for a substantial behavioral change. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, that's like the sticky part, like that's the big one, is that you want mm-hmm. behavioral change. You want to see the inflection points in the economy and technology, and then identify a new way to work that wasn't possible before. Mm-hmm. And get people to work that way. And so it's like, it's sometimes we come up against it and people are like, they say it as a negative thing, like, man, will require a behavior change. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing we're indexing for, is like your behavior now, and the way that for us, it's the way that you interact with multiple stacks and mm-hmm. all the pervasive number of applications and files within those multiple stacks in one space is like, it's a shitty behavior. Like it's a really nice way of working. And you're doing the same in the creator economy. And I'm really curious because I think one of the biggest inflection points that has happened, particularly to your economy, is NIL.
Yes.
Okay.
Talk to me about NIL.
Well, I literally just met with the Learfield is the company.
Yeah.
And I met with UGA's rep because I went to an AMA conversation, shout out American Marketing Association, and it was women in sports. And it was, I'm forgetting, I think her name is Megan Parker Shaw, who's the president of the Atlanta Dream. Another woman by the name of Alex, and I'm forgetting her last name, who's now the senior marketing director of U.S. Soccer, and they're building the new headquarters in Atlanta. And I'm like, I'm a Portland kid, so like I walked up to her and I was like, one, aside from Nike and going to my rival high school, also the women's national team to us, like women's soccer, was just soccer. There was no like
there's no difference. Yeah.
Because you were just like, no, the women's teams are like, they just were the best. And so like you went to UP and you went to see all these amazing, anyways, it was interesting to make it. And then we had the Coke sports marketing team and this amazing woman, Shelby Wright, who's at UGA. And she was just like, she knows it in and out. She's been in the sports marketing world. And I went to coffee with her, and aside from her just being awesome, she was explaining to me everything that's going on with NIL.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest, it's the biggest singular shift that has happened to the creator economy, or I think the economy period. And I'll say it, the last 100 years, really, right? If you think about like, and for those who are watching or don't understand what we're talking about NIL, I'll just kind of break it down. Is that about 3 years ago, there's a new federal regulation that was passed, name, image, and likeness, granting college students the right and authority to actually take part and receive endorsements for the usage of their name, image, and likeness while they are still in college, which is huge because previously only the teams themselves had access to it. It was illegal,
right?
Yeah. So it was a big change and it was a big shift. And it's also why right now we see the women, I think the women's side of the NCAA have really been able to kind of catapult themselves through. We think about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and kind of all of these big name college athletes that are entering into professional sports, already having huge fan bases, already having crazy endorsement deals. And it's because of NIL. And I think it's just, so amazing. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no.
I get excited about it.
I'm really glad you did. In fact, I think I meant that question so you could cut me off, because like for us, we exist to, it sounds kind of cheesy, but like we built the foundation of our company on a few different pillars, but one of them is this idea of reciprocity. And it's just like, it's a personal, like foundational thing of mine that is, if you give, you get kind of thing. And like, that's the type of community we want to build. And when we were looking at, we're really targeting the creative economy, not the creator economy per se. And looking at that overlap, because it's a forgotten market, right? When you have engineers and financiers funding technical solutions, they're not looking to creative, right? They're like, oh my God, look at generative AI. We're going to like replace every creative.
We're going to do that. Yeah.
I was like, for centuries, the creative economy or the creatives heard you say, make the logo bigger and explain why they should buy our product. And it didn't work. It is like, AI is not going to fix that, but that's a different subject for a different day. But regardless, we're going after these like creative professionals and people that really balance like really heavy workloads and have to switch a lot. And student athletes, though, are like training, a lot of them go into marketing and sports marketing and brand and technology, and they have to manage schedules that would make most people blush, right? Because
it's crazy.
D1 athletes, that is no
Yeah.
joke. Even if D3 athletes, right? Even if you're not the top of the top, you're still managing workouts and media and obligations and travel while having to study.
Mhm.
Man, that is hardcore. And to your point, like this disruption in having your NIL likeness, even if you're not a top athlete, means you might get a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
Right. Which to a student, I remember
It's a lot. Yeah. Because a lot of times with the athletes, and I think the reason NIL is really great is because even when you are a student athlete and prior, say like pre-pandemic, 2020, pre-NIL, you receive a stipend, you receive kind of a free ride, and you receive access to probably a couple of other amenities on campus, right? But everything was set up in such a way where you're not what do you call it, employee of the university. You are a student athlete, and this is the space that you occupy within. So to your point, right? Like $100,000, $500. These things it changes everything. It means that maybe you can eat off campus an extra day or two. Maybe you can, instead of taking the bus, you can have money for a car payment. So and I've seen college athletes in the work that I've done, because I've done a lot of work with just creators as a whole, athletes, helping them to build equity, helping them to understand their path afterwards. I've mentored kids who were in college on athletic scholarships, but we're trying to figure out, what do I do for the summer?
Yeah.
How do I make money for the summer? So I really love the shift that NIL has brought in, and that it allows them to generate income today off of their name, image, and likeness that they can then use outside of college, because only 5% of them are actually going to go pro.
Yeah.
Those are the numbers.
Yeah, no, but even to the pro numbers, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years. I think, credit to the leagues, but before that, the bankruptcy rate of professional athletes was insane, because they have very short careers for the most part. And not all of them get paid what Patrick Mahomes gets paid, like,
right. Yeah.
But then they try to like live up to that because they're surrounded by people with those contracts. And I think for NIL, that's the underbelly that a lot of people don't understand when you get the pop articles about, Shedeur Sanders or something with his Lamborghini code, is like, you don't understand it. Like, listen, football, just speaking to it, and UGA, I think is one of all the top tier programs. The revenue that comes in from football that they're able to generate on their media rights with the different conferences, etc., pays for a lot of the other sports.
Yeah.
And so there is always this beholden element of like, I don't know, I'm picking on gymnastics because, listen, it's one of the most watched, if not the most watched Olympic sport, but then it's the least monetized in college relative to its popularity, or one of them, right?
Yeah.
In field. And it's just really interesting to see that. But now with NIL, from women's basketball to gymnastics, people are able to take advantage of that and at least earn that extra money. One question. Okay, this is because we're in the creator economy, and it's always, I have too many things to say, so I'm just going to ask a question and let you talk about it.
Okay.
I feel like there's the above light creator economy, and there's the in the dark creator economy.
Yeah.
And you've seen Instagram try to like blend the two with their subscription only. But do you find, I mean, listen, I just think it's fascinating because you talk about an inflection point and an economic boon. I've seen the reports on what the founder of OnlyFans has like monetized, and it is bananas in a Gwen Stefani musical sense. Like, do they actually do anything that is above? Like, is that like, tell me about that.
So I think that there's like, right, so how I look at the creator economy, and you mentioned OnlyFans, but There's another platform that I absolutely love, Fanfics, that
Yeah.
kind of takes and they just announced the other day, like they launched in 2021, and they had just announced the other day that they paid out 100 million in revenue to their creators on their platform, right? And so how I think about kind of the creator economy or creator industry is kind of, my definition for creator is a little bit different than I think the definition that's out there. My definition for creator is kind of anyone who has access to an audience and the ability to monetize that audience as a creator. To that point, founders are creators, right? And so that's who we're building for, is this idea that in the future, kind of anyone will have the ability to start their own media company. And if they do have that ability, then how can they monetize and build kind of long-term monetization strategies around the work that they're doing? So to your point, like the above the light and the in the dark, right? I think there's still a limited window of time in which that OnlyFans creator will last, right? It's 2 years, it's 3 years, I forgot the numbers there, but they're a part of the creator economy because they're able to monetize something that someone wants access to. Yeah. And I think it's really, it was revolutionary in the fact that it was able to take this kind of model and then shift it and change it. What we're seeing on the other side, though, is this opportunity, this idea around subscription and how to kind of launch your own communities where you don't necessarily have to go to that other side, but it's more so focused on, okay, I'm a chef and you want limited recipes, and I can give you kind of these exclusive recipes that you do every day. And creators are the most watched type of content across, over streaming, over YouTube, over Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, Reels. The most amount of watch time goes to those platforms. And there's a reason for that, because people are looking for kind of that connection and wanting to see kind of everyday people who look like us actually doing things and being a part of that kind of creator economy. I don't know if that answered your question, but those are my thoughts on it.
No, I love it. I think the other, like where my mind goes is also that is like this B trap idea. Is like you can always be in these, in the broader sense in the creator economy. And then there are certain platforms that just, have the privacy play that like you can't come out of. Like, I don't think an OnlyFans creator it's much harder, I should say, for an OnlyFans creator to then go back into the like generic YouTube than it is vice versa.
Reverse,
to go in reverse. And once you have done that, right, there's just brand equity that is lost, right? Like, or gained, depending on how you think about it. But like, it is kind of a monodirectional type of thing.
Yeah, and I think, and that's why, like, a lot of times what we talk to creators about and helping them to build leverage is like, the power of having leverage is that you get to choose what you want to do with it. And there are two paths that you can go down. And it is like, if you want the brand opportunities, there are certain things that you just can't do because they're going to put those parameters on you. But if you're fine and saying like, hey, if I can make $1 million over here and I know that it's consistent and I can build up a SaaS model for my content and I don't need brands and I don't need the reliance on brand partnerships, I'm fine, then hey, go and do that. But there's this other path where, like you said, if you're using content as a catalyst to that next thing, then these are some factors and some things that you should be thinking about as a creator when you're starting to build and develop your audience in the platform that you choose to launch on and make your primary platform does have an impact on your long-term ability to garner partnerships. It just does.
It's it's such a crazy world. Kudos to you for being able to manage it, because I met with somebody yesterday and she's, helping me be more proactive in my content output and all of this. And she was just asking me questions. At first she was like, yeah, you're not really active. Like, I was nervous you're not going to have anything to put out there. Then she talked to me and, we shared a little bit more. She's like, no, you're really prolific. You just don't put anything out there. And I'm like, yeah, because I feel like that's somebody else's game, and Well, I think it is. I mean, even this is the best way that I know how, because I'm like, listen, I'm going to call you up and talk to you anyways, because I just like you and I'm interested in what you're doing.
Thank
And
you.
it's like, cool, well, let's hit the record button and then post it. And great, we'll get some backlinks and some stuff. But I am trying to shape personally, and maybe this is how you help shape and cater like people. Like this is part of the genius of Ingenious. But I think having and finding comfort in, it's such a cheesy or cliched way of saying it, but your authentic voice, like find who you are, find who you're interested in and what you're interested in, and go for it. And build from there. Like, how do you, I mean, you're building on the technical side, but you interact with these creators. How do you help people get through?
And I mean, that's a good question. Like, even though right now, I'm building on the technical side, but a big part of my career has been on the other side of it, where being a part of the creator development teams, working directly with creators themselves and launching creator programs and large programs for larger organizations. And so I've spent a big part of my career actually speaking to people, and I get messages all the time. I want to become a micro influencer. Where do I start? And so my advice is always kind of the same thing, where, and it does sound cliche, but the best strategies don't feel like strategies.
Yeah.
So where I always start with even our clients that I had through my agency, Visionary Rising, where I would always start with, well, what is your goal? Right? What is your goal? And then let's work backwards from there. What do you like to do? You like to talk to people. Okay, great. So maybe your content strategy isn't going to be like Mr. Beast and get it on and talking directly to people and creating these crazy videos. That's not you. That's not authentic to you. But if you can create something that's authentic to you, then naturally you'll build an audience that's attracted to that, because people are just naturally attracted to it. It's also why artists all the time, music artists, we always hear them saying like, I don't want to create another TikTok video, because it's not authentic to them. And then I reverse it and I say, well, you've already done the business of building this audience, but like the only time that you talk to them is when you have something to sell them, is when you're getting ready to release an album, when you want them to go and buy a concert, like, does that feel natural and authentic to you? It feels transactional, right? And so just even reversing that, where it's like, we're just having a conversation and you're just having a conversation with the audience. And then you're authentically working and partnering with brands that you already like. You already use this microphone. You already use those shoes. It's something that's natural to you, and figuring out a way to integrate it into the things that you're already doing. Oh, and by the way, there just happens to be a camera there. Is kind of how I would position it.
I love that. I kind of a change, right? Kind of a tangent, but we were talking about this the other day with websites, and there's there's this natural tendency. We were talking about it because I saw some venture capitalist post on LinkedIn about how he created a Chat GPT wrapper that created brands, and it was like, describe your company, and then it gave you like, here's a color scheme, here's values, like da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, so your values were manufactured by generative AI and out of like a brief description of your company. And then the color palette was literally designed to say, what does everybody else with a description similar to this use? And I'm like, you do realize the output is just homogeneous. It just makes you look like everybody else with nothing unique to say. And it's just totally transactional. I was like, okay, this is the short-sightedness of a lot of engineers and finance people, and frankly, I think why a lot more companies fail than should. And it's because you have people that think things naturally should be transactional. And it's a focus, and this isn't to what you were saying earlier, but it's a focus too much on optimization and not on value creation.
Yeah.
Right. And I got back to this because on the website stuff and launching and putting value up there. And I was doing a marketing exercise on vastly different productivity platforms like ClickUp, Notion, Monday, so on and so forth. And there were 6 of them, and they had the same exact tagline and color palette, like down to word, like switching of conjunctions, and you had the same promises. And I'm like, how can you say you're going to be everything to everybody and be different products? Like something's disingenuous. And then you realize how much of it is just optimization for conversion. And then you have switching and you have this, and it's like the creator economy when it's inauthentic, when people go out, and I can't tell you, if you have a phone, you probably have seen it. Like you'll see one video and then you'll see another one of somebody doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And
I think with technology, and like to go on your point about kind of like the optimization, and because a lot of these products are created by technologists and engineers, they're optimizing for the part of the process that's difficult for them.
Yes.
Right. And so that is the hard part, right? Is creativity. And so I think the beautiful thing about building products, being creative people, is understanding the other side of it. Understanding that, like, no one asked AI to create all of these things for us. I think the beauty of AI and the beauty of all of the technology that's coming out is like not to recreate the things that we love and make beautiful, but to augment the experience so that we can do more of the things that we love to do. One of the things that we say all the time is like, we're not trying to replace the agency. I'm not trying to replace the brand partner manager. I think those roles are vital. I think 90% of the things that they do today can be automated so that they can spend their time in those things that are actually exciting for them. Picking out the creators, working with the creators, coming up with the strategy. Those are the things that need human activity, human knowledge, human intervention. Updating a spreadsheet, connecting, sending an email, those are the things that I don't need to use my brain power for. So I think if we can reverse it, right, I think that becomes like, that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There was an article that came out today just on time management, right? And looking at the quote unquote white collar workers day and how much it's just filled with meetings, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I
hate meetings.
Yeah. No, like unless they're actually talking about and working through problems, like a lot of them are pulse checks. And listen, we can go back and we can see the trend and what hybrid work and particularly the pandemic and remote work has done. Like there are times to do and not to do meetings. And if I bring this up because if we sit in a situation where our job is to monitor optimization, you can automate optimization, right? Mm-hmm. That, to your point, that is what you can automate. Like most people have a fundamental misunderstanding of actual artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning models. Like they do not understand fundamentally what it is. They kind of do a magic hand wave like in economics and they just say the AI, right? And like, you're like, okay, like whatever. But it's a fairly simple system when you get down to it. It's a bunch of yes, no's that are like expanded at scale and go through multiple layers. And then you just have like confirmation analysis, right? And it's like templates, giant template libraries. And when you get into this, it's like, that is fundamentally powerful, especially at scale. I'm going to shout out, like my friend Ozon has a company called Edge Delta. They do like distributed data analytics on the edge, utilizing machine learning models. Like perfect use of machine learning models. That
yes.
Like do that and just like drastically reduce costs, increase speed, right? Like that's what it's so good for. He's done a great job. Now, when you start to get into like the fundamental daily tasks, you're like, listen, the job of human intervention, I love how you put that, like where humans should intervene is in the creativity, is in the inflection moments, to be original, to be creators, to reflect on multiple pieces of information and see something that's not just what's been done before. Like your point about the strategy recommendation, by the way, so spot on. Because, you know, there's an old adage that a great strategy poorly executed is worth nothing, right? A good strategy well executed is worth its weight in gold. And so when you, like, especially for people starting off, you go to ChatGPT, say, give me a strategy to do whatever, it can whittle off a great strategy. But guess what? It doesn't execute it. And the people that are getting that don't necessarily know what it means to execute it either.
That was going to be my point. Like I was having a conversation. I'm going to shout out my friend Noel. He's amazing. He's a great creative director. He's worked for crazy brands, your favorite brand, Nike, Netflix. He's amazing. And we were talking the other day about kind of the art of advertising and like coming up in, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, however long. We're not going to age ourselves, but we've been in this for a while.
Listen, my haircut ages me all the time.
But it's like the craft of understanding why something is good. It's great because of the copy. We were talking about the Nike Olympic campaigns, and it's like, oh my God, they were so amazing. And we immediately went into the technical reasons that was great. The copy was amazing. The cinematography, all of these kind of reasons that made it get everyone that emotion. And then I stopped and I was like, you know what? What saddens me is that exactly what you said. Today with AI is taking the place of craft. It's taking the place of time and essence. So yes, it can create these great videos, these nice, technically great videos, good videos. But there's always that little thing missing. You know that it's missing. And why is that? It's because the craft, the art of the craft. And I think that AI is amazing, but it should be looked at as how can we 100x these amazing creators who are doing the things that they are doing so they can stay in their zone of genius and not have to worry about all this other stuff versus we'll just replace the creator. I think that's just like an inherently bad way to think about it.
Yeah.
And so when you were talking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it, right? It's like, let's augment these things over here. Let's make the process better. And so that we can focus on the craft of things, because when strategies are created, how do you know if you're getting a good strategy? Yeah. I've been impressed with the things that ChatGPT has said because I understand the art and the craft, but there are still things that myself and my team will have to do and say, okay, we'll change this, shape that, do that. It's a great starting point, but it's never going to be able to give you those pieces to actually go out and execute because you don't, unless you've done it, you don't know how to do it.
Remind me, we're putting together a conversation on the future of creativity in tech. Okay. So you invite your friend Noel, because that sounds that we're having a couple of people from our brand world. So we're going to do it with our scene. So you're going to join me on that, because that would be like, this is literally what we're trying to do in Atlanta right now, is connect the technology, creative and brand worlds. They're massive here and there's nobody connecting the dots.
Yeah, right? That's what we're doing in Austin.
Exactly. We just need to connect these dots. But to your point, it was so funny. There's a super talented portfolio company alongside us here. And I think they're doing a great thing utilizing AI. One of the things that I think is the overpromise that happens, because I don't want to poo-poo their idea. I think their idea is really useful and really great. And they have super talented guys, like super talented. But it's the idea of like just purely federated search across applications. And it's like, no, that's very powerful and something that didn't exist in the sense that it did now with generative movements. Like, I agree. But the problem that it ignores, and I'm sure they have a way of compensating for this, but The problem that it ignores is I still need to know what to search for. And you can't replace that. It is a great monitor, but it is not a great behavioral shift, because it just adds a different, like, for me, I don't know how you are, you're probably smarter than me, but like, I kind of reference what I'm looking for, but then I need to see it. And I need to like go through it again to actually be able to work. And I know like creatives are the same, and like you can't.
I was gonna say most creators are the same.
Yeah, and you can't replace that aspect of it. And I think additionally to your point on the craft, my friend Sarah, who's going to join in that conversation, is a brilliant writer and does brand narrative, right, at the Swoosh, right, and global brand narrative, and is like just the advocate for the craft in a way that I appreciate. And what happens when you actually go through the work and you look at what's been output in this DTC era, right? I don't know if you followed along with what has happened with the Swoosh recently, but if you follow along and then go look at the Nike Strength brand on Instagram, it is the worst. Some of the worst brand, and I couldn't believe it came out of Nike. How poorly executed the design and the copy were, right? And it was, you could tell that it was optimized, that it was A/B tested to use keywords that people associated with weight training, and it was indexed to convert at cost. And you're like, you took this premium thing and you tried to optimize before you figured out what the voice was and build a brand around it. And I was like, but that's what automation does. That is what optimization does, versus somebody like Sarah, who goes in and connects with the emotion and connects you to, I don't know what the brands are that you love, but like, you connect emotion.
Nike, the Swoosh. That's what we're talking about.
But listen, like, you don't like Nike Swoosh. You didn't. Okay.
I like the brand. I love what they represent, right? And like, yeah, I love what they represent, what they've always represented to us.
Yes.
You know, for the last 20 years, I think a lot of the work that they've done, and I think that's also why so many people were excited about the Olympic campaign, because it reminded us of who Nike has always been.
Exactly.
Willing to push that envelope.
Dude, the teams that did the Olympic campaign were, sorry, but that's what fucking Nike's about.
Exactly.
Like, that is what it's about. And this is the shame. And like, Sarah, shout out to Sarah again. I'm like writing her a coercive, you have to join me on all this stuff email. But like, shout out to Sarah, because like, I think she's very honest about it. And because of that, she's revered, because she is one of the people that is a proponent for that craft. And like, you know, our advisory team is built of some of those OGs, if you will, of the 96 Olympics and the, like, you know, basically women's athletics, right? Of like those classic campaign of everyone's an athlete. And I believe, so here, let's take a hard transition away from Nike for a second. Listen, like, we're building technology companies, and I will tell you here's Peter Thiel again, a very unpopular opinion that I have in the technology world is that tech companies, because of the shrinking moat technically, are entering their consumer brand phase. And
I agree.
And that brand and emotion, like emotional and social connection with your applications and whatnot, is actually going to become hyper important, because there's no differentiation between a lot of these products.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Prior to launching Ingenious, I worked for a lot of I was advising startups in the blockchain space. Spent a good five years doing that, launched some really cool projects and things like that. And what I always told them, and what I still believe, is that product is secondary to how you make people feel. The brand, the lifestyle is what is going to win in the race. when we all have ability to create. Like the technology that exists today is amazing. We all have ability to create with similar tech stacks. There's standard things that you create. What will set you apart, and how I've approached the brand of Ingenious, and people tell me all the time, I love Ingenious. Well, what do we do? What do you do? You know, like, and then we're able to get into that conversation. But they remember Ingenious, they remember Zone of Genius, they remember us, and then we're able to go deeper into the conversation. Well, here's how we can serve you. And I think that is what's going to, like, oh, by the way, we have this amazing product that you're going to love. And so when I was entering the market a year ago, when people were saying like, hey, it's a crowded market, a lot of people are building creator tools, I was laughing because I was like, yeah, but I do this. I know that we will find our place, and we have, and we are. And it's specifically because we're leaning into exactly what you're saying. We're leaning into the feeling that we give people, and then delivering on the value that we can bring to them to streamline their places. So it might be unpopular, but it's absolutely true. And it's only unpopular if you don't understand brand and creator strategy.
Yeah, again, to a personality that is, he's a Texas guy now, but to Musk, he had a great interview when they were talking about like product development and efficiency. And his point was like, simplify before anything, like cut out as much as you can. And it's like, if you're not adding in later, you haven't cut enough. And it's like, only after you go through that one simplification and the testing, and then you can accelerate, and then you can optimize. And it's like, most people try to start with optimize, and they don't just try to like, hey, get simple down, like get simple down and put that out. And I think to your point of like the emotion and the brand is like, product is product. I can buy any shoe. I can download Coda or Notion. They're the exact same application.
They're the exact same.
Literally, Notion copied Coda. Like they just bit it. And it's like, I was reading about Lyft and Uber. I was like, stop with the reductive analysis or the deductive analysis of how Lyft did an inflection on this and Uber. I'm like, they're the same company. All right. Who cares? And there's been 1,000 other ones and 1,000 other apps. But when I remember my first experience with Uber. I was in San Francisco. I had mistakenly bought tickets to the Oregon Ducks Stanford football game, thinking it was in Eugene, and it was in Stanford. It was at Stanford. So I had to like buy a ticket, and I stayed at my first Airbnb, and I took my first Uber. And this was way back when it was like still a black car service. Shout out to Marcus Mariota. This is when Marcus, I don't know if you're a sports fan, but
I do. I'm a huge sports fan.
All right. Well, wait, who's your team? What's your teams?
I mean, in college, I mean, I'm loving LSU right now. They're killing it. They got some really great recruits this year.
So you are an Angel Reese fan then?
I am an absolute unequivocal Angel Reese fan. I love what she's doing. Love everything that she's doing. She's that's a whole nother conversation. But she's creating a great playbook for what it means to be a creator who's building a media company, and kind of our what I feel the future of the sport will look like. So yes, I'm a huge Angel Reese fan, but I digress. Back to you.
So you're a Tiger, you're an LSU fan. I'm a Duck fan. I'm an Oregon fan. Like listen, I grew up in Oregon. My parents all, families are Ducks and all that. And like, we were real mediocre when I was younger. Like it was a rainy, whatever. And then we got good. But to the point, under Marcus Mariota, I also lived in Hawaii. So he went to St. Louis High School. My boss did. Like anyways, it's a small community, big fan of it. And he's an exceptional human as well. And he was, elevating the Ducks, and I bought these tickets, and I talked to my friends who were other fans, and they're like, dude, it's in San Francisco or Santa Clara or whatever. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. So I bought a ticket, booked an Airbnb when it was still staying in other people's houses. Like it was like room share, and downloaded this Uber app, not knowing what it was. And I got off, I don't know if you're familiar with San Francisco, but I got off the Cal train from the Stanford in San Francisco, from the Stanford stadium. And I had called an Uber, downloaded it, and this town car pulls up and hollers my name. And everybody thought I was like, cool. You know, they were like, who's this guy getting a town car? Like, and I popped in and I took it over whatever to get like a bacon wrapped hot dog somewhere in the Mission. And anyways, I just remember that feeling of like, man, I skipped all the lines, didn't wait for a taxi, and I got this like car that picked me up. And that was exceptional. It was just a different travel experience to both of those brands, right? It was like, it was just different, but it was an emotional connection. The app was shit. Airbnb, like, it was kind of weird. It was funky, but like, it wasn't easy. But it just was like, it had that emotional interaction, just was like, yeah, I'll use this. Like,
it was your aha moment of like, I don't have to stay in hotels and I don't have to do cabs or taxis. Like, what? Whole new world.
But here's the thing. I didn't give a shit about the GPS embedded in the iPhone
at all.
Right? That wasn't what it was about. And like, I hear people say like, well, that was the technical inflection and we had to do this, but like, no, like, I'm the consumer. I didn't care. So as long as it establishes an emotional or social value on top, the function can be a little less, and I'll come back. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and that's also why we don't use any AI in our marketing, because I've marketed brands before, and I've marketed blockchain brands before, and kind of emerging technology. And the example that I always use is like, you don't think about the technology at all. When you're cold or hot and you turn on the AC, you know that it solves a problem for you. You don't think about the compressors turning on and it's kicking out the air, and you don't think about that. It's just, you just know that I'm hot, I turn on the air, I'm no longer hot. Yeah. And so when I think about products, like, when I speak about the product that we're building, yes, we have AI in it. It's there. It uses it. It makes it easy. I never talk about it when I'm talking to our potential customers or our customers. We don't use it in our marketing because they don't care. Yeah. They care that we're solving the problem for them. They care that we're doing something for them in a faster ability, and that we're helping them to scale their programs. How we do it, how it happens, it doesn't matter to them, just that the product that they log on to works. And I think if technologists focus more on what it unlocks, the utility, and less on, hey, I'm building with AI and this is it, it doesn't matter.
No, 100%. And I think this is a good point to end on, right? But I posted this study that just came out a couple days ago on LinkedIn somewhere, out into the ether, and they did a survey on like product purchasing analysis, whatever, and 100% of respondents reduced the value or like didn't purchase or something, like whatever it was. 100% of respondents devalued a product if it included AI.
I believe
it's valued, right? Like,
because they don't understand it. And they don't understand what AI is. And so when you tell them it's AI, they're going to automatically, it's again changing the behavior, right? It's something that's new. It's something that's technically more advanced than what we're used to, the general consumer is used to. And because of that, they're going to automatically devalue it because they don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they don't understand it. I also will add that I think that people inherently, to your original point, don't care. Like, and what, like, you know, currently, right? And I think this is brilliant that you're not including it as marketing. You know, my CTO and I, Sean, were talking about this. Is like, what AI did in the last year and a half. Like, I don't know if you saw the reports on how many companies are going out of business, like startups, and how many of those are AI companies, right? That have zero fucking traction because they're not doing anything of actual value. They just took technical like accomplishments and like tried to package them. You're like, that doesn't, you know, whatever. But to the point, what it did do was it made everybody do the shift and spend at least 2 months of engineering and time and cost on those types of innovations to incorporate them in their company. And now it's expected in everything, but you shouldn't market it and position it. So we're going to talk about this in creative. This has been amazing,
Yeah,
LaTecia.
this has been great.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Thank you, Jake.
Well, thank you for coming. And we're going to talk offline at some point here soon, because this conversation of creative creators, technology is, I think, one of the biggest market opportunities in the world right now. So I'm hoping you and I are right at the epicenter, right?
We are. I love this. I'm happy that we were able to connect.
All right. LaTecia, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, bye.